They were supposed to start at 4 sharp. Where was he? She turned slightly, trying not to glance at the empty space where Troy, Hanks, her fiancé, co-CEO, the man she'd trusted, should have been. Her pulse thundered louder than the quartet's cello. Behind her, murmurs spread like wildfire. Did something happen? Is this a joke? She looked so calm. Hello, my wonderful and beautiful family. In every heart there's a story, some filled with joy, some with tears, and some with a kind of love that survives even the darkest nights. Here at Love and Twilight, we don't just tell stories, we live them with you, stories that heal, inspire, and remind us that even when the sun sets, love is the light that never fades. I want to sincerely apologize for the mistake that occurred in yesterday's episode. I know many of you look forward to these stories, and any error can take away from the experience you deserve. Please know it was not intentional, and I truly value your patience, understanding, and continued support. Every story I share is crafted to touch hearts, and I promise to do my best to ensure such a mistake doesn't happen again. Thank you for staying with me, for forgiving the slip, and for being the heartbeat of Love and Twilight. And if you are still with Dr. Phillips, say yes, I am with you, Doctor, in the comment section below. Like and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss a single of our stories we share to you every day. No, she didn't. She was breaking, each second stretched like a blade. Her lips were dry. Her eyes scanned the doorway again. Still no Troy. Not even a groomsman with a whisper of explanation. Not even a whisper. Then, Hayden. The voice cut through the crowd. It was low, steady, comforting in a way she hadn't realized she needed. She turned. Brad Hanks, Troy's older brother. He walked down the aisle with a presence that silenced everyone. Tall, dark-haired, broad shoulders wrapped in a tailored navy suit, calm eyes, gray like thunderclouds. And then he did something no one expected. He stepped beside her, not in Troy's place, but by her side, and with a gentleness that could disarm steel, he reached up and removed her veil. Not a word, not a lie, not an excuse. Just truth in his silence. I'm taking you out of here, Brad said. Hayden stared, blinking through a fog of shame and mascara. This isn't your humiliation to wear, he added. The pianist's hand faltered. Someone gasped. Another whispered, that's his brother. But Brad didn't care. And for the first time, neither did she. Hayden let him take her hand. They walked past stunned relatives, abandoned centerpieces, and shattered expectations. Outside, the late September sky was a brilliant blue, mocking her. Photographers followed, flashing. Brad raised his arm to shield her face. Don't, she whispered. What? Don't protect me like I'm broken glass. He looked at her. You're not broken, but you shouldn't be alone. She nearly collapsed, not from weakness, but because someone finally saw her, not as a symbol of shame, but as a person trying not to fall apart. He drove her in his matte black Mercedes, smooth, silent, and strong, like him. They didn't speak. Hayden clutched her bouquet like it could still make her a bride. Halfway down Lakeshore Drive, she asked quietly, do you know where he is? Brad's jaw tensed. I have an idea. He left me. Brad, he left me, like I was nothing. You're not nothing, Brad said, eyes locked on the road. He was the one too weak to say it to your face. The words made her flinch. But somehow, they helped her breathe. When he dropped her off, Brad didn't try to linger. He opened the door, helped her out, and handed her the keys she'd left in the church dressing room. Sleep, he said. Tomorrow you take your name back. She looked up at him, this man she barely knew, yet suddenly trusted. Why are you being kind to me? She asked. Brad didn't smile, didn't look away. Because you deserved more than he gave you. And because I saw you first. Hayden froze. What? He shook his head. Forget it. And just like that, he turned, got back in his car, and drove away, leaving her alone, but somehow not abandoned. The sun was too bright the next morning. Hayden lay in bed, still in her wedding dress, makeup smudged, hair pinned like a question mark. The bouquet sat wilted on her kitchen counter. She didn't cry. Not yet. She showered, scrubbed her skin until it turned pink, and pulled her hair into a bun so tight it hurt. She wore black slacks and a cream blouse, back to corporate mode. No one was going to say she collapsed. No one was going to call her a tragedy. She arrived at Hank's Financial Group's downtown headquarters at 8:01 a.m. Reception froze. The elevator doors opened, and the Queen walked in. The 41st floor was quiet, too quiet. Hayden passed desks filled with paused conversations and quickly turned heads. Every screen tried to pretend it was open to financial reports instead of gossip articles. She didn't blame them. Even she had seen the headline on her phone that morning, "Billion-dollar bride abandoned at the altar." Where is Troy Hanks? What hurt worse was the photos. There she was, Hayden Watson, standing under a stained glass arch, waiting for a man who never came. And there was Brad beside her, strong, still, unflinching. Had he planned to do that? Had he felt something? Hayden sat in her glass-walled office. The espresso in her cup was bitter, just the way she liked it. She barely looked up when the door opened. "You still haven't taken a day off," Brad said. His voice was calm, like always. A baritone that didn't ask. It stated. She didn't flinch. "I haven't bled out either." Brad entered slowly, his jacket unbuttoned. His dark hair slightly tousled. His black shirt matched the steel watch on his wrist. He sat down across from her. There was silence, but this one wasn't heavy. It was waiting. "I didn't like how things ended," Brad said. Hayden didn't look up. "You mean when I was publicly humiliated?" "No," he said. "I mean when he ran." She finally met his eyes. "You knew?" Brad nodded. "I spoke to him that morning. He said being with you felt like walking around with a live grenade." Hayden's throat tightened. "Because I challenged him?" "Because you saw through him," Brad replied. A pause. Then Brad added, "And he didn't want to be seen." Hayden leaned back, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "So what? You're here to validate me? Be the noble brother?" Brad's jaw twitched. "No," he said. "I'm here because I wouldn't have run." That stopped her. She blinked. Her heart made a sound she hadn't heard since prom night. "Hope. What did you say?" He leaned forward. His voice was low, not performative. "I wouldn't have run, Hayden." Brad stood to leave. But Hayden's voice stopped him. "Wait." He turned. Her words came out slow, cautious. "I always thought you didn't like me." Brad tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "I didn't show it," he said. "But that doesn't mean I didn't notice you." She stood, crossing to the window. Below, the city pulsed with life. She took a breath. And then she turned around. For the first time, she looked at him without her fiancé's name hovering between them. Brad wasn't Troy's brother anymore. He was just Brad. "Then why did you keep your distance?" she asked. "Because he chose you first," Brad said simply. Another long pause. Then he added, "But he doesn't get to choose for you now." Brad walked to the door, hand on the knob. "I'll be in the conference room if you need anything." He opened it. But before leaving, he turned over his shoulder. His voice was soft this time. "Don't let what he did define what you deserve." Then he was gone. Hayden stood alone. But something in the room lingered. Not pain, not shame. Something new and dangerous. It had been 31 days since Hayden Watson walked away from the altar and stepped back into her empire. 31 days since Troy disappeared. 31 days since Brad Hanks began showing up in quiet, unannounced moments. But this morning, this Monday, felt different. Hayden arrived at Hanks Financial Group at exactly 7:59 a.m. She was wearing a sharp indigo suit, her hair pinned in a low knot, heels echoing across the marble floor like a metronome of power. She didn't glance at the people watching her. They were always watching, but not one of them could say she'd faltered. Because she hadn't. Her office had become a war room. Post-it notes across the glass. 2 monitors lit with investor data. A legal document draft in her inbox waiting for her final signature. She was building something bigger. A digital wing that would revolutionize how clients accessed wealth portfolios. Something she created. Not Troy. Not even Brad. Her. She didn't have time for grief. Grief was unproductive. She had caffeine instead. She sipped her espresso, no sugar, no cream, and stared at her roadmap for expansion across 2 states. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She knew it was him before he spoke. Brad stood in her doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled to the elbows, collar unbuttoned slightly. just enough to remind her that this man didn't believe in being picture perfect. He believed in showing up. "You're early," Hayden said. "You're earlier," Brad replied, stepping in. He looked around the room. "You've done more in 1 month than Troy did in a year." Hayden let that hang. "I didn't come for flattery," she said, taking another sip. "I didn't offer any," Brad replied. "I came because I think it's time." "Time for what?" "For you to take his chair." Troy's office had remained untouched. No one had dared step inside, not even the custodial team. His chair sat like a ghost on the 42nd floor, glass-walled, silent and watching. Brad stepped closer. "The investors are circling," he said. "They're wondering who's in charge of what Troy left behind." Hayden's eyes narrowed. "What did he leave behind?" "A gap," Brad replied. "A power vacuum. A reputation you've had to clean up while he hides." Hayden crossed her arms. "So, you want me to fill his space?" "No," Brad said. "I want you to erase it." She blinked. He continued. "Let's restructure the board, merge your department into the central authority, make you the face. Not Troy, not me, you." Hayden leaned back in her chair, eyes sharp. "And what do you get out of it?" Brad smirked. "Someone who actually gets things done." Hayden stood, walked around her desk, and leaned against the edge. "So now we're allies?" she asked. Brad stepped closer. "Maybe more than that." She raised an eyebrow. He added, "I didn't just come for business. I came because I couldn't stop thinking about what you looked like standing there, waiting for a man who didn't have the courage to stay." Silence crackled. Hayden's voice dropped. "And now you want to be that man?" Brad's response was immediate. "No, I want to be better than him." The distance between them shrank. She stared at him. He didn't flinch. She didn't smile. But something shifted. Hayden returned to her seat. "Let's do it," she said. Brad blinked. "Do what?" "Merge the divisions, restructure the board. I'll make a public statement by Friday." His face remained unreadable. "And Brad," she added, "if you're serious about being different from your brother, prove it with loyalty, not lines." He nodded once. "I'll call the lawyers," he said, walking to the door. "Brad," she called after him. He paused. "Thanks for showing up." He looked at her over his shoulder. "I plan to keep doing that." Then he was gone, and Hayden exhaled. For the first time in weeks, it wasn't out of frustration. It was out of possibility. That night, Hayden sat alone on her couch, laptop open, eyes on a board memo she'd drafted 3 times already. The words wouldn't land. She wasn't thinking about the company. She was thinking about Brad. And Troy. There was a time when she thought she'd build her entire life with Troy. They were CEOs, power partners, tied at the hip in boardrooms and in bed. Or at least, she thought so. But Brad's words echoed louder than the silence Troy left behind. "I wouldn't have run." She closed the laptop. The past needed to be confronted, not avoided. Hayden dialed Brad. He answered on the second ring. "You okay?" he asked. "Do you know why Troy really left?" she asked, skipping the small talk. Brad didn't speak for a second. Then he exhaled. "Yeah, I want to know now." "Yes," she said. "Now." Brad paused again. Then, "All right, come over." Brad's loft overlooked the river. Steel and concrete softened with low lighting and clean lines. It was quiet, grounded, much like him. Hayden walked in, arms crossed tightly. "Tell me." Brad poured a glass of bourbon, then didn't drink it. He leaned on the kitchen counter instead. "Troy told me months ago," he said, "that he was scared of you." She frowned. "Scared?" "Not physically," Brad added. "Emotionally. He said being with you made him feel like he had to be better than he was ready to be." Hayden blinked. Brad continued. "You challenged him. You expected him to grow, to take accountability. He didn't want to rise to your level. He wanted to stay comfortable." She sank into the leather chair near the fireplace. "I thought I was helping him." "You were," Brad said, "but he wasn't strong enough to receive it." Silence again. Then he added, "And he hated how I looked at you." Hayden's head snapped up. "What?" Brad set the glass down. "He said he noticed it. The way I watched you in meetings. The way I listened to you when he tuned out. The way I respected your voice when he just wanted you to be his accessory." Hayden's mouth parted. "He said that." Brad nodded once. "He told me, The real reason he walked away wasn't because of pressure or the wedding. It was because he couldn't compete with the way I made you feel, even if nothing had ever happened. Her chest tightened. You make me feel, she whispered, then stopped herself. He didn't push. He just stepped closer. He said he loved me, Hayden whispered. So why didn't he fight? Because love without courage is just decoration, Brad said. Hayden stood. And you? What are you offering? Brad walked toward her. Truth. Nothing else? He shrugged. You didn't ask for promises. You asked for truth. She studied him. The lines in his face, the steadiness in his eyes. She reached for his hand. Warm. Firm. No hesitation. I hated you, she said quietly. At first, for being the calm one, for never interfering, for never saying anything while I fell for your brother. I know. And now? Brad looked down at their hands. I'm still the calm one, he said, but I'm not silent anymore. They didn't kiss. They didn't undress. They just stood there, the air between them charged but controlled. He walked her to the elevator. Before she left, he said, Hayden. She turned. If you ever want to talk more or anything more, you know where to find me. She nodded. The elevator doors closed. She pressed her back against the wall, heart racing, not from panic, from clarity, because Brad didn't need to chase her. He simply made space for her to choose. The sky over Chicago simmered with the glow of a late evening storm. Clouds stretched low, heavy with the kind of silence that comes after chaos. Hayden stood alone on the rooftop terrace of Hank's tower. 42 floors up, wind curling around her blazer. She sipped from a steel thermos, chamomile tea, her new evening ritual since insomnia became a roommate. She hadn't meant to think about Brad, but his words from the night before lingered like fingerprints on glass. You didn't ask for promises, you asked for truth. She didn't hear the elevator open, but she felt him before he spoke. You keep needing someone to, Brad said quietly. Hayden didn't turn, not at first. You keep showing up, she murmured. Brad walked to the ledge beside her. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled up again. That same look, relaxed but aware. I figured you might be up here. You following me? No, he said. I just wanted to see you without the glass walls. She arched an eyebrow. And Brad looked out over the skyline. You're still the strongest person I know, but strength gets heavy, even in heels. She huffed a breath. Not a laugh, but not annoyance either. I'm not looking for someone to carry me, Brad. I didn't offer, he said, but I won't let you fall alone. Lightning flickered in the distance. Hayden turned to face him fully. There's still so much I don't know about you, she said. Ask me anything. Why didn't you ever stop Troy? Brad's voice dropped. Because I thought you loved him, and because it wasn't my place, until he made it my place by leaving. Her heart thudded. You really wanted me all along? I wanted you the moment you walked into our boardroom in that gray dress. You corrected my numbers mid-presentation without flinching. You didn't flirt. You didn't pause. You were fire in a room full of smoke. Hayden's breath hitched. You remember the dress? Brad stepped closer. I remember the scent of your perfume, the click of your heels, and the exact moment I realized I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what it would feel like to be your first choice. They stood just inches apart now. Rain began to mist the rooftop. Soft, cooling, unapologetic. Hayden didn't know who moved first, but suddenly his mouth was on hers, urgent, warm, hungry. Their bodies crashed together with months of unspoken words between them. Brad's hands were at her waist, fingers gripping through fabric. Her arms wound around his neck, pulling him closer. Too close wasn't close enough. She gasped against his mouth. This is a mistake, she whispered. Then let's make it again, Brad said, his voice raw. And they did. He pushed her back against the brick wall. She didn't care about the rain, didn't care about the city staring from below, didn't care that anyone could see them if they looked up from the street. All she cared about was the way he kissed her, like she belonged to him, like the world had stopped spinning until she kissed him back. His lips traced the edge of her jaw. Her fingers tugged at his shirt collar. He pressed his forehead to hers, breath heavy. You don't know how long I've waited to touch you, he murmured. You don't know how long I've needed someone who actually sees me, she whispered. Brad's hand slipped under her blouse, palm flat against her back. Her body arched toward him involuntarily. But then, she pulled away. Not out of fear, out of control. I can't. Not here, she said softly. Brad stepped back immediately, hands raised. No pressure, he said. Never pressure. Hayden's chest rose and fell, eyes locked on his. They were both breathing like runners at the end of a race. She wiped the rain from her lip. I just need to think. He nodded. I'll wait. For what? For whenever you stop thinking, Brad said. Because I know what I want. I just need you to want it freely. He walked away, the rain trailing his steps like applause. And for the first time in years, Hayden wanted more than safety. She wanted freedom. Hayden sat cross-legged on her living room rug, a single candle flickering on the coffee table. Her phone lay untouched, her inbox full. But all she could think about was that kiss. Not just the way Brad's lips had found hers, but the way he'd stopped when she asked. The restraint, the respect, the tension. She traced the rim of her wine glass and whispered aloud, "What am I doing?" No one answered, except her own heartbeat and her memory. Her phone buzzed. A message from Brad. If you're still up and not overthinking, I'm on my balcony. She stared at it. The words weren't demanding. They weren't begging. They were an open door. Hayden didn't type back. She grabbed her coat and keys and walked out. Brad's apartment was quieter than she remembered. Dim lights, jazz humming low through a speaker. He was already outside, sleeves pushed up, leaning on the railing, glass of water in hand. He turned when she stepped out. You didn't reply, he said. She shrugged. I thought showing up said more. Brad gave a slow smile. It always does. They stood side by side again, just like the rooftop. Only this time, no rain, just the weight of their choices. Hayden took the glass from his hand and sipped, then handed it back. You sure you want this? She asked. Brad didn't hesitate. I've wanted this since before I was allowed to. She stepped closer, her chest grazing his. I'm not a fling, she said. I don't do flings, he replied. I'm not soft. I know. I bite. He smirked. So do I. Their mouths met again, slower this time. Not rushed, not needy, intentional. Hayden's fingers slipped into his hair. Brad's hands traced her back, pausing at the hem of her blouse. I want to feel your skin, he said against her mouth. Then take it, she whispered. He did. Inside, her jacket fell first. Then his shirt. Her heels clicked against the hardwood as he backed her against the bookshelf. She gasped when his mouth found her collarbone. He lifted her effortlessly, arms strong, holding her up like she weighed nothing, her blouse unbuttoned, his chest warm against hers. He laid her down on the oversized leather couch, the same one they'd sat on when they discussed board strategy. Now, there were no numbers, no meetings, just her body beneath his, her breath shallow, his name slipping from her lips. Brad. Say it again. She pulled him closer. Brad. He moved with precision, like he'd dreamed this moment 1,000 times, but waited for her to say yes. His lips left trails down her stomach. His hands held her thighs wide. His tongue was gentle and relentless. Hayden arched, gasped, cursed under her breath. She gripped his shoulders as waves crashed through her. Then quiet. Stillness. Afterglow. But they weren't done. She pulled him up by the waistband of his pants, pushed him into the couch, straddled him. Slowly, with intention, their eyes locked. I want to ride you until I forget every broken vow, she said. He nodded once. Then let's start forgetting. And they did. The bedroom was darker, cooler, more intimate. This time, the world was gone. He moved inside her slowly, each thrust deep and measured. Hayden cried out, not just from pleasure, from relief, from release. From knowing she wasn't alone anymore. Brad whispered her name like a prayer, over and over, and when she collapsed against his chest, he held her there. Neither said a word, but everything had changed. Sunlight crept in through the curtains. Hayden woke in his bed, tangled in sheets and warmth. Brad wasn't there, but the scent of coffee pulled her toward the kitchen. She found him shirtless, barefoot, 2 mugs on the counter. He turned. Good morning. Hayden leaned on the doorframe, hair messy, skin still glowing. Morning. He handed her a mug. No small talk, just silence. The kind that says, "We're past pretending." 3 nights after their first time, Hayden stood in the elevator of Brad's building again. Same scent, same nerves, but something inside her had shifted. This wasn't lust anymore. It wasn't rebellion. It was something forming, something too raw to name yet, but too powerful to deny. When the elevator doors opened, Brad was already at the entrance, barefoot, glass of red wine in hand. "You came," he said. "You asked," she replied. He stepped aside, letting her in. "You're overdressed," he added. Hayden smirked. "You're underestimating me." His loft was minimalist but masculine. Polished wood floors, black framed artwork, a record player humming Miles Davis. A candle flickered on the kitchen island. 2 plates, untouched. Dinner, forgotten. Hayden kicked off her heels. Brad leaned against the wall, watching her. "You're dangerous," he murmured. She looked over her shoulder. "Because I want something real." "No," he said. "Because you already are." She walked toward him slowly, unbuttoned her blazer, dropped it to the floor. His eyes followed every move. By the time she reached him, his hands were already at her waist, sliding under the hem of her blouse. He kissed her like a man who no longer needed permission, only her presence. This time there was no rush, no edge of scandal or stolen time. Only need, only heat. She turned and hopped up onto the cool marble island. Brad stood between her thighs, fingers tracing her inner knee, lips ghosting her throat. "I dreamed of this," he said, voice low. She pulled him closer. "Stop talking and keep dreaming." Their clothes hit the floor in pieces. His mouth traveled south. Her legs opened without a word. He devoured her slowly, patiently, until she was arching, panting, whispering his name like it had always belonged to her. She pulled him up, fingers sliding into his belt. "You're not done," she whispered. He carried her to the couch, laid her down, kissed her forehead, then her shoulder, then lower. When he entered her, she gasped. It was deep, warm, right. Brad held her face in his hands as he moved inside her, eyes never leaving hers. "Don't look away," he said. "I wasn't planning to," she breathed. Every thrust echoed a promise. Every kiss wrote a new history between them, one not built on betrayal, but rebirth. Later, wrapped in a single sheet, Hayden lay with her head on his chest. Brad stroked her hair in silence. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't want to leave," she said quietly. "Then don't." She looked up at him. "Brad, this can't just be about sex." "It's not," he said. "It never was." "Then what is it?" He paused. "It's us." Finally, Hayden didn't reply. She didn't need to. Her fingers slid into his. She squeezed, and he squeezed back. Around midnight, she woke up thirsty. She walked into the kitchen, barefoot, wearing his shirt. Brad followed. "You always sleep with your guard up?" he asked. She poured water, smirking. "Only when I care." He stepped behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. "Well then," he whispered in her ear, "I hope you never rest easy again." She turned, facing him. "You want difficult? I want you." And he took her again, this time against the fridge, her moans soft and urgent, his hands gripping her thighs, lifting her, guiding her. Nothing about it was careful. Everything about it was real. As the sun cracked over the river, Hayden sat on the balcony in his hoodie, coffee in hand, hair undone. Brad joined her, setting a croissant on the table. "I didn't plan this," she said. He nodded. "Neither did I. But I don't regret it." He turned to her, face unreadable. "Good. Because I'd do it again." She smiled faintly. "You already did. Twice." They both laughed. A real laugh. A light moment in a heavy life. Brad reached for her hand. No promises, no contracts, just a touch. And for now, that was enough. The headline dropped just after 9 a.m. Jilted bride seen leaving Groom'S brother's apartment, in his shirt. There were pictures. Grainy, but clear enough. Hayden, stepping out of Brad's building with his hoodie draped over her legs. Brad, following her, hand gently on her lower back. The look they shared. Intimate, undeniable. The media ran wild. By noon, her assistant forwarded 36 press inquiries. By 12:30, 3 sponsors had suspended talks. By 1 p.m., her mother called, and all Hayden said was, "No comment." But inside, she wasn't calm. She was furious. Not because they'd been seen, because she'd spent years being perfect. And now, one moment of real happiness was being weaponized. The boardroom on the 43rd floor was full. Legal team, marketing director, investor relations. Everyone looked tense. Hayden walked in, wearing a steel gray suit, hair slicked, eyes sharp. She didn't sit. "Let's make one thing clear," she said, voice even. "My personal life isn't a scandal, it's a distraction. Let's treat it as such and move on." The head of PR cleared his throat. "The language in the media is complicated. Some are calling it unprofessional." Brad entered mid-sentence. "I call it irrelevant," he said, dropping a file on the table. "Third quarter projections, all up. No client loss, no financial impact." He looked at Hayden. "Tell me again how this is anyone's problem, but there's—" Later, in her office, Hayden stared out the window. Brad leaned against the desk behind her. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she said honestly. He waited. "I've spent years controlling my image, my work, my narrative. Now it's being chewed apart because I had the audacity to fall for someone unexpected." Brad crossed the room slowly. He didn't speak. He just stood behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. "You didn't fall," he murmured. "You rose. You chose." She leaned back into him and whispered, "What if this costs us everything?" Brad kissed her temple. "Then we'll build something new. Together." They didn't hide. They faced it. Together. That afternoon, a press briefing was scheduled. Brad stood beside her, calm, composed. Not a word rehearsed. Hayden stepped to the mic. "No, I won't comment on the photos. But I will say this. When someone walks out on you, you don't crumble. You lead. You keep going. And if someone stands beside you in the hardest chapter of your life, don't shame it. Don't scandalize it. Learn from it." A murmur spread. Brad stepped up. "I stand with Hayden Watson," he said, voice clear. Personally, professionally, entirely. No one asked a follow-up, because there was nothing left to question. Of course, not everyone applauded. One article read, "How many lines were crossed before they fell into bed?" Another op-ed called her emotional. Another labeled her volatile. Brad wanted to sue. Hayden said, "Let them talk." "You're not angry?" he asked. She smiled, just barely. "Oh, I'm furious, but silence is a better revenge. Let them choke on our success." That night, back at Brad's loft, the city lights flickered across their skin. Hayden curled into his side, eyes tired but clear. "You still want this?" she asked. "Every piece of it," he replied. She looked up at him. "Even the part where I can be a complete control freak?" "Especially that part," she chuckled softly. "And if I ruin your reputation, you'll upgrade it." She pressed a kiss to his chest. "You're not what I expected." He smiled. "Neither were you." Hayden stood at the head of the long oak boardroom table, arms folded, eyes fixed, voice still. "I built this division, from zero, from concept to execution. So if anyone here doubts my capacity to lead because of my personal life, speak now." Silence, but not the respectful kind, the hesitant kind. One director finally cleared his throat. "Hayden, it's not a matter of doubting your performance. It's the optics." Brad sat beside her, still, focused. "Optics don't raise stock," he said. "Results do, and she's delivered them." Another investor leaned forward. "This scandal—" "Call it a headline," Hayden interrupted, "because it'll be forgotten by next week. What won't be forgotten is this company's failure to back its own visionary leadership." Her voice didn't crack, and no one responded, because she was right. Hayden clicked the remote. Slides filled the screen. Metrics, growth, expansion, retention, digital conversions. All green, all proof. She turned slowly, looked each board member in the eye. "You want someone who never makes headlines? Find a man who does nothing. But if you want progress, if you want profit, you back someone who dares to lead despite noise." Brad nodded subtly, allowing her to own the moment. The youngest director whispered something to her neighbor. Hayden saw it, but she didn't flinch. "Say it out loud," she said. "If you have a doubt, name it." The man blinked. "You're not afraid of anything, are you?" Hayden tilted her head. "I'm afraid of mediocrity." That's why I'm still here. An emergency vote was called. Half expected it. Some wanted her removed from all external media-facing roles. Some wanted to delay expansion. But what they didn't expect was Brad voting first. I vote we back her, fully, unconditionally, he said. Because leadership doesn't look like comfort, it looks like courage. Then another hand went up. Then another, 7-2. She kept her face still, her breath steady. But as the vote settled, she turned to Brad. He gave the smallest nod, and that was all she needed. She closed the door behind her. Brad entered seconds later. You didn't need me in that room, he said. No, Hayden replied. But it helped. She walked to the mirror, removed her earrings one by one. I was ready to walk away, she said, if they chose fear. But they didn't. No. They chose me. Brad leaned against the wall. That must feel good. It feels earned, she said. A pause. Then she added, but it also feels terrifying. He walked toward her, placed his hand on the small of her back. That's how you know it's real. The next day, Hayden stood in the break room with her assistant Mia. Mia whispered, that was the most boss move I've ever seen. Hayden smiled faintly. It was survival. Still, you looked untouchable. Hayden shook her head. I wasn't. I was shaking under the table. Mia blinked. Really? Hayden nodded. Leadership isn't about fearlessness. It's about action anyway. She walked out, coffee in hand, heels tapping softly. And the entire 41st floor watched her go. Not out of gossip, out of respect. That weekend, a different article trended. Watson defies board doubt, delivers market-leading quarter. It included a photo from the press conference. Brad behind her. Hayden in front. No ring, no title, just presence, just leadership. Hayden sat alone on her balcony, city lights blinking below. The wind was sharp, her wine untouched. She should have felt victorious. She'd survived the scandal, shut down the board, held her empire together. But her mind wouldn't stop spinning. Brad was everything Troy hadn't been. Solid, present, honest. Too honest? Too present? She hated herself for even asking that. But old wounds ran deep. When someone leaves you once, it stains your belief system. Even when someone else shows up differently. Especially then. She met up with her college roommate Lorna the next day for brunch. They hadn't spoken in weeks, maybe months. You look exhausted, Lorna said as they slid into the booth. I am. Work? Life? Lorna stirred her coffee, watching her. I saw the pictures. I bet everyone did. And I saw the interview. Hayden waited. Lorna set her spoon down. He's either everything you've always deserved, or you're about to bleed twice from the same vein. Harsh, but not wrong. I know, Hayden whispered. Do you trust him? I want to. That's not what I asked. Hayden looked down at her plate. I'm trying. Later that afternoon, Brad knocked once before entering her office. You left early this morning, he said, setting a bagel on her desk. You were sleeping, she replied. His eyes didn't waver. But you didn't say goodbye. Hayden stood slowly, crossing to the window. I didn't want to start my day explaining why I needed space. Brad didn't flinch. You think I'm waiting for you to fall apart, he said. She turned, sharply. Aren't you? No. I'm waiting for you to trust that I won't be the one to break it. Silence. Then she asked, have you ever lied to me? No. Not once? Not once. He stepped closer. She didn't back away. I've loved one man who left, she said, and now I'm terrified of loving one who might actually stay. Brad's voice lowered. You don't have to love me yet. You just have to believe me now. Tears burned in her eyes. What if I can't? Then I'll believe enough for both of us. She pressed her face into his chest and cried, not out of heartbreak, out of healing. That evening, she found an old voicemail, one she'd never played, from Troy. Hayden, I can't do it. Not because I don't care, but because I don't know how to be the man you need. And Brad already is. Maybe he always was. You just didn't see it. I'm sorry. She sat frozen. He had known. He had seen it. Even then. It was nearly midnight when he showed up at her door. She opened it without question. He didn't say anything. He just held out his hand. And she took it. Scene 1. Brad comes home late. The clock read 11:42 p.m. Hayden paced barefoot across the living room, a silk robe wrapped tight around her frame. A movie played on the TV, volume low, untouched. Brad finally walked through the door, loosened tie, creased shirt, tired eyes. "You're late," she said. "I know." She waited for more. None came. "You didn't answer your phone." Brad dropped his briefcase on the counter and poured a glass of water. "I was in back-to-back meetings. All day." He drank. "Pretty much." Hayden folded her arms. "Are we doing this now? Are we becoming them?" Brad looked up slowly. Them? People who avoid truth because it's easier than breaking routine. Scene 2. The conversation avoided too long. Brad walked toward her slowly. "I didn't lie," he said. "I was in meetings. But not the kind you think." "What kind, then?" "Estate attorneys." Hayden's spine straightened. "Your father's lawyers?" He nodded. "And?" "They want to divide the company." She froze. Brad continued. "They think with Troy gone and me involved with you, everything's compromised." Her voice dropped. "They're trying to cut you out. They're trying to cut us out." Hayden sank onto the couch. "Why now?" "Because we're winning," Brad said simply. "Because they can't control what we're building." Hayden rubbed her temples. "What are our options?" Brad sat beside her. "They can't legally remove us unless we give them reason to, but they're watching for cracks. And our relationship is the biggest one." "Yes." She scoffed. "So what do we do? Pretend we're not involved? Issue a press statement that I'm celibate and you've become a monk?" Brad didn't smile. "We stay strategic. You lead. I back you. We keep our business above reproach. And us?" He reached for her hand. "We stay quiet, but not hidden." Hayden shook her head. "I didn't fight this hard to be hidden." The next morning, Hayden met with her personal attorney. "Trusts are being reassessed," he explained. "Brad's inheritance hinges on performance metrics that were created when Troy was still active. Without him, those metrics shift. You are seen as a threat to that legacy." Hayden exhaled slowly. "Because I'm not blood? Because you're not controllable?" She leaned back in her chair. "Tell them to prepare for disappointment." That night, they had dinner on the rooftop. Alone. No media. No board. Just her favorite salmon and his bourbon neat. But the silence was different. Tense. Hayden finally said, "Tell me what you're not saying." Brad paused. "They're trying to push a buyout." She blinked. "Of your stake?" He nodded. "And mine and yours." Hayden stood. "That's war." "I know." She turned away. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I didn't want to bring more weight into what we have." She turned back around. "But this is what we have, Brad. This is us now. Power, love, risk, all tangled. I'm not asking you to protect me. I'm asking you to let me in." Brad stood too. "You're right." Then softer. "I just didn't want you to feel like you had to carry my name in their baggage." "I don't carry anything I don't claim," Hayden said. "And I claim you. All of it." That night, in bed, Brad wrapped his arms around her. "No matter what happens," he said into her shoulder, "they can't take what we've built." Hayden placed her hand over his. "They can't touch the foundation, because it didn't start with money." Brad kissed her neck. "It started the moment you took off that veil and didn't cry." She smiled into the pillow. "It started when you walked toward me, not away." And for the first time since the headlines began, Hayden slept deeply. Because even if the walls shook, the foundation held. Hayden arrived at the office to find a white envelope sitting on her desk. No return address. No stamp. Just hand-delivered, discreet but bold. She opened it. The letterhead, Hanks and Rothman, attorneys at law. It was a formal notification of interest, a thinly veiled threat from Brad's father's estate board. They were launching an independent inquiry into conflicts of interest within upper executive relationships. Translation: they were coming for her. She didn't panic. She printed copies, called her legal counsel, and scheduled an immediate meeting with Brad. He arrived 10 minutes later, jaw already clenched. "You saw it?" she asked. He nodded, throwing a matching envelope on the table. "I got the same one." "They're trying to divide and isolate." "They're playing chess," Hayden muttered. "Then we move like queens," Brad replied. She didn't smile. "Not yet. We need to decide something," she said flatly. "I'm listening." If this comes down to me or your inheritance, it won't. But if it does, Brad stepped closer. Then they can keep the money. I've already got everything I want. That night, Hayden sat alone in her condo. She stared at her phone. One call could end it, quietly. No scandal, no mess, just distance. She could walk away and let him keep his empire. But that wouldn't be love. That would be retreat. And she hadn't spent her life climbing only to disappear when love knocked. She put the phone down and stood. She wasn't backing down. 2 days later, a private meeting was requested. Brad, Hayden, and a senior representative from the estate advisory team met in a quiet, high-rise office downtown. The man across the table wore a polite expression, but his tone was surgical. "We believe Mr. Hanks's involvement with Miss Watson is clouding judgment," he said. Brad folded his arms. "You're mistaking clarity for confidence." The man continued. "If you'd be willing to step back from this relationship for a probationary period, say 1 fiscal quarter, we could expedite your control approval." Hayden's stomach twisted. This was it. The moment. She turned to Brad. He didn't blink. He leaned forward, voice even. "You can keep your approval. I'm not negotiating love." They left the building without speaking. Hayden pressed the garage button. The elevator was silent. Brad finally spoke. "They thought they could buy us off with time." Hayden nodded. "They thought I was the weak link." "You're the strongest thing in my life," Brad said. She looked at him, then slowly whispered, "I needed to see if you'd flinch." "Did I?" "No," she said. "And that's why I'm not going anywhere." That night, back at her place, she didn't speak when he entered her room. She just grabbed his tie, pulled him in, and kissed him like it was the first time. Clothes vanished in seconds. She rode him with fire, hands pressed to his chest, eyes locked. Brad gripped her hips and whispered, "Tell me you're mine." "I'm not yours," she said. "I'm ours." And that made him lose it. Their bodies collided like a contract. Unbreakable, signed in breath, inked in sweat, sealed in trust. As they lay tangled in sheets, Brad traced circles on her thigh. "They'll keep coming," he said. Hayden nodded. "And we'll keep building." He turned to her. "You're not afraid anymore?" She looked into his eyes. "I'm never afraid of truth, only of wasting time." He smiled and whispered, "Then we're right on schedule." Hayden sat at her desk, staring at her calendar. 2 back-to-back meetings, 1 board luncheon, and a video shoot. And yet, her stomach had been turning all week, her chest tight, her head light, her emotions volatile. At first, she chalked it up to stress, but when her assistant Mia handed her black coffee that morning, Hayden recoiled. "No thanks," she said, pushing it away. "You okay?" Mia asked. "I'm fine," Hayden replied. But even she didn't believe it. That evening, after the office cleared out, Hayden drove to a small pharmacy just outside downtown. She wore sunglasses, a hoodie, and kept her head low. The woman at the counter didn't ask questions when Hayden grabbed the box, just rang it up, slid it into a paper bag, and wished her luck. Hayden didn't respond. She was already breathless. Back at her condo, Hayden sat on the edge of the bathtub, fingers trembling as she opened the test. She followed the instructions mechanically. 1 line appeared quickly, and then another, bold, unapologetic. 2 lines. She stared at them for a full minute, then 5. Her heart pounded. She pressed a hand to her stomach. She wasn't sick. She wasn't broken. She was pregnant. She walked into the living room and collapsed onto the couch. No tears, no smile, just silence, until the thoughts began spinning. Brad, the company, the press, the empire. She wasn't afraid of being a mother. She was afraid of what this meant for everything they'd built. She called him. He came. Didn't ask questions when she opened the door in silence. Just followed her to the couch. Hayden handed him the test. No words. Brad looked at it, looked at her, back to the test. His voice cracked. "Are you okay?" "I don't know," she whispered. He stood, walked a few steps away, then turned back. There was no panic, just awe, and something softer. He stepped forward and knelt in front of her. "Then I'll be okay enough for both of us," he said. Hayden stared at him, and for the first time that night, she cried. Later, curled in bed, her back to his chest, she whispered, "I'm scared." I'd be worried if you weren't, Brad murmured. I don't want this to change everything. It won't. You don't know that. No, he said, but I know you, and you don't break. You rebuild. She turned in his arms. I never planned for this. Neither did I. A beat. Then Brad whispered, but I'd do it all over again, just to get here. 2 weeks later, the doctor confirmed it. Not just 1 heartbeat. 2. Hayden sat frozen on the exam table. The technician smiled softly. Twins, she said. Congratulations. Brad stood beside her, hand in hers. Tears welled in his eyes. 2 lives. Hayden blinked. 2 chances. Back at the loft, Hayden sat on the rug, cradling a cup of tea. Brad knelt behind her, rubbing her back gently. She turned and whispered, Axel and Winifred. Brad froze. Where did that come from? She shrugged. It just felt right. He kissed her shoulder. They already have names. That means they already matter. She leaned into him. And for once, she didn't think about the headlines, the board, the empire. Just the future, and the 2 heartbeats shaping it. Brad sat on the edge of the bed, staring out the window. Hayden watched him from the bathroom doorway, towel around her waist, hair dripping onto her shoulders. He hadn't spoken since they got home from the ultrasound. She dried her arms slowly. Say something, she finally said. Brad stood, turned to her and said, I'm going to be someone's father. You're going to be 2 people's father, Hayden corrected gently. He exhaled. That's what terrifies me. They sat on the couch in matching robes, untouched mugs of tea between them. Brad rubbed his palms together. I never thought I'd be good at this, he said. Not because I don't want it, but because, growing up in that house, love was currency. Approval came with conditions. Affection was a myth. Hayden nodded slowly. And you think you'll carry that into fatherhood? I think I might fight it every day. She reached for his hand. Then fight, and I'll fight with you. His eyes met hers. Promise me we won't let this become a headline, that we won't let them twist this into scandal. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. This isn't their story to tell. It's ours. 3 days later, Brad came home with a shopping bag. Hayden raised an eyebrow. What's that? He pulled out a hardcover book titled What to Expect When You're Expecting Twins. She laughed. You bought a parenting guide? I bought 5. I started with the one that looked least overwhelming. Hayden took the book and opened it. The first chapter had a sticky note. His handwriting, page 17, how to support her without being annoying. She burst out laughing. You're actually reading this? Brad sat beside her, smug, and highlighting. That night, Hayden woke from a dream. Sweat clung to her skin. Her chest rose too fast. Brad stirred beside her. What's wrong? I dreamed I lost them, she whispered. Brad sat up instantly, wrapping her in his arms. They're okay. You're okay. We're okay. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I've built companies, broken ceilings, but this is different. Brad kissed her forehead. This isn't about being strong. This is about being human, and we're allowed to be scared. She gripped his arm tighter. I want to do this right. We will. Together. A week later, they walked through a baby store. Brad, in all black, stuck out like a sore thumb between pastel aisles. Hayden pointed at a wall of cribs. We need 2, he grinned. Matching? She rolled her eyes. They're not decorative throw pillows. They ended up picking 2, 1 cream, 1 midnight blue. As they walked toward the car, Brad whispered, This is real now, isn't it? It was real the moment those 2 lines showed up, she said. But now, he looked down at the car seat box in his hands. Now it's visible. Later that night, Hayden video called her mother. When the image came on, her mom gasped. You're glowing. I'm sweating, Hayden said. And scared. Her mom leaned in. You're not scared of being a mother. You're scared of losing control. Hayden paused, then whispered, You're right. Hayden, the best kind of power is the kind that lets others lean on you. You've always carried the weight. Now let someone else carry a little of it too. Brad passed behind her on camera, shirtless, folding baby clothes. Her mother smirked. Like him, Hayden smiled. He's trying. He loves you. That's the only requirement for trying. That night, as Hayden lay in bed, Brad knelt beside her, hands on her belly. Axel, he whispered, rubbing one side. You're going to be bold, Winifred, he said, rubbing the other. You're going to be brilliant. Hayden blinked back tears. I never imagined this version of you. He looked up at her. I didn't either. But I think this is the only version that matters. Hayden stood in front of her full-length mirror, hand resting on the swell of her stomach. 5 months in, 2 heartbeats beneath her skin. The empire hadn't slowed, but she had learned to pause. Just enough to breathe. Her wardrobe had changed, sleek maternity suits, flowing blouses that concealed and revealed depending on the occasion. But nothing could hide what was coming. Life. At Hanks Watson Capital, the team now stood whenever she entered a room. Not because she demanded it, but because she'd become a living reminder that a woman could lead with power and still grow a family. Some investors still grumbled in the background, too emotional, too distracted. Brad handled them all the same way. With silence and results, one image changed the tone online. A photo, Hayden, radiant in a red dress, standing on stage at a tech summit, hands on her bump, flanked by 2 female interns. The caption read, Mother, CEO, Mentor. It went viral. The narrative flipped. Suddenly, the headlines weren't scandal, they were inspiration. At night, the only place she could truly unwind was Brad's loft. They'd turned the second bedroom into a nursery. Still empty, still waiting. One evening, Brad came in with a bottle of cocoa butter. No meetings tonight, he said. Good, Hayden murmured, reclining on the couch. He knelt before her, pushed her blouse up gently, and began rubbing the oil across her growing belly. Her skin glistened. Her breath slowed. You're learning, she whispered. I read 5 articles. And? He smiled. You hate most of them. Correct. He leaned down and kissed her stomach. Your mom's not easy to please, he said to the bump. But that's how empires are built. By her 6th month, Hayden had delivered 3 new accounts, led 2 mergers, and doubled their digital product engagement. All while waddling. One board member tried to suggest she take a leave early. Hayden stared him down. If I can close a $10 million contract with swollen ankles and back pain, what exactly makes you think I'm unfit to lead? No one said a word. Brad sipped his coffee and smirked. She didn't need his help, but he always loved watching her work. One evening, as summer rain threatened the skyline, Hayden and Brad stood on the rooftop terrace where they first kissed. She leaned against him, hands resting low on her belly. They kick more when you talk, she said, because they know I'm the fun one. Debatable. He kissed her temple. You scared? A little. Of what? That I'll be too much for them. Brad turned her gently to face him. You are never too much. You are the exact amount required to raise legends. That weekend, Brad gave her a gift. No box. Just a folded note inside an envelope. She opened it. It was a poem. Handwritten. 2 short stanzas. 1 heart broken, now 2 will beat. A love not planned, but born complete. She blinked rapidly. Brad waited. You wrote this? He shrugged. Google's down. She pressed the note to her chest and whispered, You're going to be their safe place. And you, Brad said, pulling her close, are already their home. The nursery wasn't extravagant. No chandeliers. No golden wallpaper. Just soft gray walls, a white shag rug, and 2 identical cribs on opposite sides of the room, one labeled Axel, the other Winifred, their names in brushed brass above each frame. Hayden stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes glistening. Brad stood behind her. They're going to grow out of this space in a year, she said. And then we'll build a bigger one. Hayden leaned back into him. I don't want it bigger. I just want it safe. Later that night, Hayden sat on the floor beside the crib labeled Winifred, folding baby socks into neat rows. Brad walked in with 2 cups of warm milk, his new nighttime ritual for her. You okay? He asked. I've been thinking about her name, Hayden replied. Brad tilted his head. You want to change it? She shook her head. No, I want to live up to it. He sat across from her. Say more. Hayden stared at the tiny socks in her hand. My grandmother's name was Winifred. She was iron in heels, ran her household like a boardroom, but she still sang lullabies. Brad nodded slowly. She'd love this, he said. Hayden met his eyes. She never doubted herself. And some days, I do. They moved to the couch. Brad pulled a blanket over her legs. Sometimes I worry, Hayden whispered. What if I break under this? What if I wake up one day and I can't carry it all anymore? Brad didn't rush to reassure her. He just listened, then softly said, Then I'll carry you. Hayden swallowed hard. I'm serious, Brad. I don't know how to be both the woman I was before and the mother I need to become. You won't be both. She frowned. What do you mean? You'll be someone new, and I'll love that version too. Brad had installed high-end baby monitors, complete with motion sensors and night vision. Overkill, Hayden teased. Prepared, Brad countered. That night, as they lay in bed, the monitor crackled to life. There was nothing but silence, no crying, no movement. Still, Brad sat up, checked the screen, and then lay back down. Hayden smiled. You're already a dad, she said. He blinked up at the ceiling. Feels surreal. Feels permanent. You say that like it's bad. She turned to him. No. I say it like I've finally stopped bracing for the exit. Hayden stood in the walk-in closet the next morning, hand running over rows of power suits. She hadn't worn heels in a month. She didn't miss them. Instead, she reached for a navy cotton dress, something soft, stretchy, mother-shaped. Brad appeared in the doorway, brushing his watch strap. Blue suits you, he said. Comfort suits me better, she replied. He stepped closer, pulling her hair into a low ponytail. You can still run empires in flats. I might never go back to stilettos. Good. Those things made you 20% more terrifying. She laughed, and the tension melted. That night, Hayden tossed in bed, unable to sleep. Brad rolled over. What's wrong? I keep feeling like I'm forgetting something. You're not. I am. Brad propped himself up on one elbow. What would make you feel more prepared? She paused. Writing them a letter. Brad blinked. Like, now? She sat up. I don't want to wait. I want them to know who I was before everything changes. Brad nodded. He climbed out of bed, grabbed a notebook, and handed it to her. Hayden opened to the first page and began, to Axel and Winifred, if you ever wonder who your mother was before she became Mom. Hayden wrote for nearly an hour. Brad watched, silent, only interrupting once to refill her tea. When she finished, she closed the book, pressed her palm over the cover, and looked at him. I told them the truth, she said. Then they already have more than most. She handed him the notebook. You write something too. Brad raised an eyebrow. Now? Hayden smiled. Yes, now. This is our first act as their parents, giving them words they'll never forget. Brad flipped to a fresh page. Dear Axel and Winifred, I never thought I'd be someone's home. But then your mom let me stay. It was early January. Chicago lay beneath a soft white blanket, peaceful on the outside, chaos brimming inside Hayden Watson's penthouse. She was 8 months and a week in. Everything had been prepped, the go bag, the car seat, the route to the hospital. But babies didn't check calendars. Hayden stood in the kitchen, sipping warm lemon water, when a sudden wave hit her abdomen. She froze. It wasn't Braxton Hicks. It was sharp, deep, real. Her mug slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Brad, she called out, voice urgent but steady. He ran in, half-shaven, towel still over his shoulder. She met his eyes. It's time. They moved quickly, but without panic. Brad helped her into the car, double-checked the hospital bag, and grabbed 2 pillows. For moral support, he said. The roads were slushy, traffic slow. Hayden gripped the seat, breathing rhythmically. Want me to talk or shut up? Brad asked. Both. Got it. She closed her eyes, whispered affirmations to herself. When another contraction hit, she grunted through clenched teeth. Breathe, Brad said, gently pressing her hand. She looked at him between waves of pain. Don't pass out. I won't. You better not. I'm already doing the hard part. They arrived at the hospital at 7:41 a.m. Brad pulled up to emergency, and nurses met them at the curb. Hayden was wheeled in. The world became a blur of white coats, beeping monitors, and instructions that seemed to echo underwater. Twins. Full dilation. Prep the room. Brad changed into scrubs, hands shaking only once when he tied the last knot. A nurse looked at him and said, Dad? He blinked. Yes. I'm the dad. Then get in there. Hayden gripped the bed rails, sweat dripping from her brow. Brad stood at her side, one hand on her shoulder, the other gripping hers. "Axel first," the doctor said. Hayden nodded, teeth clenched. "You're doing incredible," Brad whispered. She let out a guttural cry. One more push. Then, a cry. High, strong, alive. Tears flooded her eyes. "That's him," Brad whispered, voice shaking. "That's our boy." The nurse held Axel up briefly, then moved fast. "Second one's positioning," the doctor said. "Not perfect, but workable." Hayden was already pushing again. Her body trembled. So did Brad's hand. "You've got this," he said. Forehead pressed to hers. One more cry. This one softer, sweeter. Winifred. Minutes later, Axel and Winifred were brought to her chest. Hayden cried, unapologetically, openly. They were tiny, red, real. Brad leaned over her, staring down in complete awe. "They're everything," he whispered. Hayden looked up at him. "And so are you." He kissed her forehead. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For showing up. From the very beginning." Back in recovery, Hayden lay between warm blankets, babies swaddled in her arms. Brad paced slowly, still in scrubs, holding a phone. "I already told the office to cancel everything," he said. She smiled weakly. "You told the board?" "They can survive a few days without us." Hayden yawned. "You mean, without me?" He looked at her. "No, I meant without us." She blinked, and for the first time, believed him entirely. A nurse offered to take a picture. Hayden held Axel. Brad held Winifred. They didn't pose. They just looked at each other. The camera clicked. Later, the image would hang in Brad's office, and eventually in the lobby of Hanks Watson Capital. But in that moment, it was just a memory, captured before life moved too fast again. That night, the babies slept in clear bassinets beside their hospital bed. Hayden stirred, reaching for water. Brad sat beside her, hand on her knee. "Can I say something?" he asked softly. "Always, I thought I knew what legacy meant. Until today." She reached over, placing her hand over his. "They're not the legacy," she said. "We are. Because we didn't run." Brad blinked away tears. "They'll never wonder what love looks like," he whispered. "No," Hayden replied, "because it'll always be in the room with them." 3 days after delivery, the 4 of them were strapped into the car. Hayden in the passenger seat, 2 bassinets in the back, and Brad driving like he was transporting diamonds. He didn't speak for most of the ride. Just checked the mirror every 5 seconds, hand never leaving the gear stick. Hayden glanced over. "Breathe." "I'm breathing." Then, "Stop sweating." He smiled, finally. "They're really ours." "Yes," she whispered. "They've been ours since that rooftop." The loft was warmer than Hayden remembered. Maybe it was the sun coming through the blinds. Maybe it was the 2 heartbeats, now filling the space. Axel let out a soft cry as she carried him inside. Winifred blinked, adjusting to the new light. Brad opened the nursery door, paused, and said, "We're really doing this." Hayden walked past him, placed Axel gently into his crib. "Yes, we are." No nurse, no press, no help, just them, and the quiet responsibility of everything they created. The first day was a blur. Burp cloths, tiny diapers, soft squeaks. Hayden sat on the couch nursing Winifred, while Axel lay curled against Brad's chest. She looked up. Brad had dozed off, head tilted, mouth slightly open. Hayden didn't wake him. Instead, she whispered to the baby in her arms, "That's your father. He doesn't always say much, but he never leaves." She looked over at them again. "That's what love looks like, sweet girl. No noise, just presence." Later that night, Brad opened his laptop, drafted a simple auto-response. "Thank you for your message. Brad Hanks will be on family leave for the next 2 weeks, available only for urgent matters. In his absence, please direct all queries to Hayden Watson, co-founder, CEO, and the reason we all exist today." He smiled at the last line, then hit send. Hayden stood by the window at 1:12 a.m., swaying slightly with Axel asleep on her shoulder. Outside, the city moved on, headlights, trains, late-night walkers. Inside, her world had slowed. Brad stepped behind her, Winifred in his arms. They stood like that for a while. No words, just breath. And new life. The next day, her phone buzzed. One message, no name, just a number she hadn't seen in months. Heard about the twins. Hope you're well. She stared at it. Brad walked in. She showed him the screen. He read it, then shrugged. Let it be what it is, he said. History. She nodded, deleted it, turned off her phone, then reached for her daughter. That night, they sat on the floor of the nursery. Brad fed Axel. Hayden burped Winifred. She looked at him across the room, then softly said, "We're a family now." He looked up. "That we are?" She smiled. "We did it." "No," Brad corrected. "You did it. I just got smart enough to stand beside you." She stood, walked over, and knelt in front of him. "We built this," she said. He kissed her, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. Later, when both babies finally slept, they lay in bed. Hayden curled against Brad, one monitor screen between them. The quiet was full of tiny coos, little breaths, and the occasional baby sigh. Brad whispered, "Do you miss the old life?" Hayden traced his chest with her finger. "I thought I would. And now? I'd trade 1,000 boardrooms for one more night like this." He exhaled and replied, "Good, because this is just the beginning." The twins were teething. Hayden hadn't slept more than 4 consecutive hours in weeks. Her body had changed. Her routine had changed. Her relationship had shifted from candlelit evenings to rocking chairs and burp cloths. She sat on the edge of the bed one morning, staring at herself in the mirror. A different woman, softer, stronger, but undeniably changed. Brad walked in shirtless, holding Axel like a football. He kissed the top of Hayden's head. "You're still the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he said. Hayden didn't reply, not because she doubted him, but because she didn't recognize the woman in the mirror the way he did. That evening, both babies were finally asleep. The white noise machine hummed. The night was unusually still. Hayden walked out of the nursery and into the living room, exhaling like she hadn't in days. Brad stood in the kitchen, pouring 2 glasses of wine. She raised an eyebrow. "Special occasion?" He handed her a glass. "No diapers, no crying, no interruptions. That sounds dangerously like a date." He grinned. "Then let's make it one." They sat on the balcony, wrapped in a shared blanket. Hayden wore one of Brad's t-shirts and nothing else. The air was warm. The city lights stretched wide beneath them. "You haven't touched me in weeks," she said suddenly. Brad looked at her. "You've been tired." "I'm always tired." "Exactly." She turned to face him. "I still want you." His jaw clenched. "I never stopped wanting you." Then softly, "But I didn't want to make you feel like you were someone to perform for. You're not a body I need. You're the woman I adore." Hayden swallowed and climbed onto his lap. They kissed slowly, not with urgency, but intention. Brad's hands slid under the shirt, reacquainting themselves with every inch of her skin. Hayden moaned into his mouth, shifting her hips, grinding softly. "Bedroom," she whispered. "No," he replied. "Here, now." He pulled the blanket over them, laying her gently on the outdoor sofa. The wind rustled around them, but all she felt was heat. He undressed her like he was unwrapping something sacred. Her body had changed, but his eyes hadn't. He kissed every stretch mark, every curve, every line etched by motherhood. "You're even more powerful now," he said. She cupped his face. "I don't want worship," she whispered. "I want fire." Then, "Let's burn." He slid inside her slowly, both of them gasping at the rediscovery. Their rhythm was familiar, but deeper. They moved together, not like strangers, not like lovers at war, but like soulmates who'd survived the storm. They lay in the afterheat, bodies tangled, hearts sinking. Brad kissed her collarbone. "That's what I missed." She looked up. "The sex." He shook his head. "No, you, unfiltered, untamed, unapologetic." She smiled sleepily. "I needed to find her again." "She never left," he said. "She just made room for something greater." Hayden closed her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, she slept deeply, wrapped in love and reclaimed desire. Hayden woke to the smell of fresh coffee and soft jazz playing from the kitchen. Brad was barefoot, shirtless and humming, completely unaware that she was watching him from the hallway. Her body ached in all the right ways. Her heart, unexpectedly, quiet, not anxious, not restless, just steady. "Good morning," she said. leaning against the wall. Brad turned, grinning. You slept through 2 baby feedings. I did. You earned it. He poured her a cup and set it on the counter. And you moaned in your sleep. She narrowed her eyes. That's a violation of privacy. He handed her the mug. That's marriage without the paperwork. Later that afternoon, the twins were napping. Hayden folded laundry while Brad cleaned out the diaper bag. They moved in rhythm, no music playing, no words exchanged. Then, she broke the silence. We never talked about what last night meant. Brad looked up. I figured you'd bring it up when you were ready. She nodded slowly. It meant something to me. He walked over, took the shirt from her hand and placed it on the table. It meant everything to me, he said. Hayden sat on the couch, arms crossed, eyes distant. I spent years preparing to lead, to win, to never need. Brad sat across from her. And now, I do need, she whispered. And that scares me. He leaned forward. Needing someone isn't weakness, it's permission. She looked at him. For what? To stop surviving and start living. A beat passed, then another. Then, I love you, she said. Not dramatic, not whispered, just truth. Brad didn't react at first. He stood slowly, walked to her, knelt at her feet, and placed both hands on her knees. Say it again, he said. I love you. His voice cracked. I've been waiting to hear that for years. I know, she said. And I didn't want to push. You didn't have to. You just had to stay. He pulled her into his lap. Not fast, not aggressive, just certain. They kissed like it was the last time and the first time all at once. Her legs straddled him. Her body responded immediately. But this wasn't just physical. It was sealing something sacred. They moved together on the couch, slow, deliberate, eyes open. Every motion was an oath, every breath a promise. When she came, she buried her face in his shoulder and said, "This is it. This is home." As rain tapped against the windows, they lay side by side, skin slick, hearts slowed. Hayden traced her finger along Brad's chest. "Do you think we'll always be like this?" He turned to her. "Honest? Always. Some days we'll fight, some days we'll be tired. But if we keep choosing this us, we'll outlast everything." She nodded, eyes full, body warm, and whispered, "Then I choose us." The jazz lounge sat tucked away behind an unmarked brick door in the river. North District, one of those hidden places only a few knew existed. Hayden had called ahead, booked the table, and requested their favorite pianist. She arrived first. A sleek red gown hugged her curves, her hair swept back in a low twist. The lighting kissed her skin gold as a hostess guided her to a small, candlelit table near the stage. She ordered 2 glasses of the Pinot they'd once shared after a board meeting. The night she'd first noticed Brad watching her like a man and not a brother-in-law. Brad arrived 10 minutes later, trim in a dark gray jacket and black open-collar shirt. He looked like every rich man in Chicago, but somehow still hers. He leaned in and kissed her cheek. "What's the occasion?" he asked, sliding into the seat. Hayden smiled. "No occasion, just you, me, a little jazz, a little wine. And one big surprise." He raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" "Not unless you're allergic to diamonds." 2 songs in, after the saxophonist hit a long solo that made everyone sigh, Hayden reached into her clutch. "I was going to wait until dessert," she said, "but I never was good at waiting." Brad looked at her, then down, where she pulled out a small velvet box and set it on the table. "Hayden, no big speeches," she cut in gently. "You already know everything. You've seen me broken. You've seen me fierce. You've seen me pregnant, hormonal, sweaty, screaming, and powerful." He chuckled. "You forgot radiant. And radiant. But I've never said this part officially." She opened the box. Inside was a simple platinum band. Engraved on the inside, "Let's never survive alone again." Hayden looked him dead in the eyes. "Brad Hanks," she said, "you stood by me when your brother didn't. You didn't ask for my love. You earned it. You gave me a home I didn't know I still deserved." Her voice softened. "And I don't want to wait for you to ask. I want to be bold enough to ask you first. So, will you marry me?" The room had quieted. Even the band had paused, picking up on the energy. Brad stared at her, stunned. Then, his eyes filled. He exhaled slowly and whispered, "Yes." She slipped the ring on his finger. The crowd around them erupted in soft claps, respectful hoots, and one old lady at the bar shouted, "That's how you do it, honey." Brad laughed. "You hijacked my plan." Hayden sipped her wine. "What plan?" He pulled out a box from his coat pocket. "Oh my God. I was going to propose tonight too," he said. "Had this whole romantic speech about building empires and nurseries and forever." She leaned in, grinning. "Then give me the speech anyway. I like hearing you talk about forever." He opened his own box, revealing a thinner band, rose gold, with 2 tiny birthstones embedded, one blue, one pink. "Hayden Watson," he said, taking her hand. "You didn't just survive what Troy did. You rebuilt something stronger. You didn't ask me to save you. You asked me to see you, and I did. I do." He slid the ring on her finger. "I want to marry the woman who made me believe in redemption, who gave me twins and taught me how to hold joy without flinching, who leads with fire and loves without apology." She blinked back tears. "Damn it, Brad," she said. "Now I'm going to cry in public." The pianist played a soft tune. Hayden stood and extended her hand. "Dance with me, fiancé." He took it without hesitation. They swayed under the low lights, surrounded by strangers who now felt like silent witnesses to something sacred. "I can't believe you beat me to the proposal," he whispered. She leaned into him. "Well, I did propose the company, and I did start the nursery designs. You're just late to most good ideas." He kissed her temple. "Then let me make up for it in every day of our forever." The lounge was still buzzing from the double proposal, but at their table, time moved differently. Brad hadn't let go of her hand. His thumb moved slowly over her knuckles, memorizing the texture of the moment. They weren't just engaged, they were aligned. At last. But there was something in his eyes. A glint of hesitation Hayden recognized from long ago. "You're not second-guessing, are you?" she asked, quietly. Brad leaned back, shook his head. "No, I'm just letting go." Hayden tilted her head. "Letting go of what?" He exhaled. "Of everything I thought I had to carry." She waited. "My whole life, I watched Troy win. He got the spotlight, he got the praise, and then, somehow, he got you, even when I knew, deep down, that I saw you first." Hayden's lips parted. Her heart fluttered. "I was the background," Brad said, his voice low, "but you never made me feel invisible. And when he walked away, I was scared, not just for you, for me, because I didn't want to step in only to be a rebound." Hayden tightened her grip. "You weren't. I know that now. But I had to grow into that belief. You didn't fall into my arms out of desperation. You chose me, again and again. And tonight, you proposed to me. No one's ever chosen me first like that." Hayden leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice soft. "You were never second, Brad. I just didn't know how to see what was real until what was fake walked out." He looked up at her. Vulnerable, open. She cupped his face with both hands. "I'm not waiting anymore. Not for Troy's name to fade, not for people to approve, not for perfect timing. We're done waiting. We love. We live. We build." He nodded, emotion caught in his throat. "I love you," he whispered. She smiled. "Then say it louder." He stood, placed both hands on her waist. "I love you," pressed a kiss to her forehead. To hell with hesitation. We are not living in shadows anymore. As they stepped out of the lounge into the cool night, snow had just started falling. Chicago's kind of snow, quiet, sudden, cleansing. Hayden looked at the ring on her finger. Brad noticed. "You sure you want that ring?" She nodded. "More than I ever wanted anything from Troy." He kissed her knuckles. "Then I'll wear mine proudly too." They stood beneath the dim street lamp, the snow swirling like a soft applause from the heavens. And in that moment, they both knew. They'd buried the past, not with resentment, not with regret, but with love. Love that came after chaos. Love that was earned. The executive suite at Hanks Watson Capitol shimmered like the crown jewel of Chicago. From floor-to-ceiling windows, the city looked like a glowing map of everything they'd conquered and everything they'd built together. Brad stood with his hands in his pockets, dressed in a gray custom-tailored suit. His jawline was sharper now. Fatherhood hadn't softened him. It had defined him. Behind him, the glass door slid open with a soft click. "Guess who's loose in the war room?" Hayden said, amused. Brad turned. "Let me guess. The royal duo?" Crowned and chaotic, she grinned. In the main conference room, a long oval table stretched beneath chandeliers. But today, it wasn't hosting bankers or partners. It was hosting Axel and Winifred. Axel, dressed in a miniature navy blazer with gold buttons, stood on a swivel chair pretending to run a meeting. "Everybody listen," he declared. "We're going to build robots." Winifred, in a velvet cream dress and white patent shoes, twirled in place while holding her plush lion. "Only if the robots can dance." She giggled. Brad leaned against the doorframe. "They're rewriting capitalism as we know it." Hayden chuckled. "Just wait till they figure out what taxes are." He glanced over at her. "You think they'll want this someday?" She paused. "Maybe not in the same way we did, but they'll inherit more than a company. They'll inherit a story." On the wall behind the head of the boardroom table hung a massive digital screen cycling through media footage. Hanks Watson Capital surpasses $50 billion in assets. CEO couple named Forbes Power Builders of the Year. From abandonment to empire. Hayden Watson's rise. There were photos too. Brad at a tech summit in Berlin. Hayden leading a financial literacy workshop for underprivileged youth. Axel clapping in a tiny suit beside Brad on stage. Winifred offering flowers to an award recipient. But none of it outshone what was on the center table. Finger paints, half-eaten, cookies, and a glitter crown with a sticky note that read, "Queen Mummy." Brad pulled Hayden into the lounge beside the boardroom. It was soundproof. Luxe. A sanctuary within the kingdom. He poured her a drink, sparkling water in a crystal flute. "To us," he said. Hayden tapped her glass to his. "To surviving scandal, and sleepless nights, and teething." He raised a brow. "And to empire building. Let's not forget that." Hayden softened. "You know," she said, curling into his side, "the thing I'm proudest of isn't the Forbes list, or the expansion into LA and Austin, or even the fact that my ex disappeared into obscurity." Brad smirked. "Then what?" She kissed his chest. "I'm proud that we never gave up, even when the whole city whispered we were just a scandal waiting to implode." Later that day, a private photo shoot took place in the office for a legacy feature in a business magazine. Photographers captured candid images of Axel seated beside Brad, pretending to analyze charts. Winifred curled in Hayden's lap, drawing hearts on a whiteboard. The caption would read, "The next generation of boardroom royalty, built on grit, grace, and love." But behind the cameras, Brad crouched in front of his children. "Do you know why this building matters?" he asked them. "Because it's tall?" Axel guessed. Winifred whispered, "Because Mommy made it pretty?" Brad smiled. "Because it stands for what happens when people choose love and work hard, not just for money, but for meaning." Hayden's eyes shimmered. "And because your mom is the smartest woman in Chicago," Brad added with a wink. As the shoot ended and the lights dimmed, Hayden whispered to Brad, "We built this, from rock bottom." Brad nodded. "And we're not done." But for now, they watched their children race down the corridor lined with photos, laughter echoing into the future. The empire was thriving, and it was personal. It was early, too early for phones, boardrooms, or even coffee. But Brad sat on the penthouse balcony, Axel asleep against his chest, breathing softly. Winifred was curled in a blanket beside him on the outdoor lounge chair, her hand tangled in his shirt. The sky cracked open in soft golds and pinks. Hayden stepped outside, her robe loose around her. No makeup, no pretense. Just the woman who had become everything. "Couldn't sleep?" she whispered. He kissed Axel's curls. "Didn't want to miss this." She joined him, and together they watched the city slowly wake. "I think about him sometimes," Hayden said, unexpectedly. Brad looked at her. "Troy?" She nodded. "Not because I miss him, but because I still wonder how someone can walk away from this." Her eyes flicked down to Axel. "From them." Brad stayed quiet. "Maybe it was never about them," he finally said. "Maybe it was about what he couldn't face in himself." Hayden sighed. "He taught me how low I could be dragged, but you taught me how high I could rise." She took Brad's hand and rested it on her heart. "I needed to lose what was false to find what was real." There had been people who stood by her, despite the scandal, the press, the whispers. Mrs. Geraldine from her childhood church, who mailed handwritten prayers. Kelsey from legal, who took a demotion just to stay under Hayden's leadership. And Marcus, the quiet janitor who once paused in the hallway and said, "Don't let the noise change your spirit." Hayden had written their names down in a journal, called it her circle of fire, those who stood when it would have been easier to leave. She kept it in her drawer, not to remember the pain, but to honor the loyalty. That afternoon, Axel sat on the kitchen island swinging his legs while Brad cooked. "Daddy," he asked, "do you and Mommy run the world?" Brad chuckled. "We just try not to let the world run us." "Did you always know you were going to marry her?" Brad paused, flipping a pancake. "No, I just knew I couldn't let her go twice." Axel tilted his head. "Because you love her more than football?" Brad laughed. "Way more. Even more than pizza?" "Definitely more than pizza." Axel nodded solemnly. "Then I'm going to marry Mommy too." "Good luck." Brad smiled. "She's got high standards." In her office, Hayden wrote a letter, part of a ritual she'd started after the proposal night, to the version of me who didn't know how strong she was. She told the truth, about the night she cried on the bathroom floor, about the shame of loving someone who broke her, about the miracle of not letting that shame define her. And then, she wrote what she'd learned. Love isn't found, it's built. Loyalty isn't loud, it's consistent. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's how you reclaim power. You don't need closure from someone who couldn't give you clarity. She sealed the letter and placed it in the keepsake box beside her children's birth bracelets. One evening, she visited her old apartment, the tiny one she'd lived in after Troy left. It was now occupied by a young woman with tired eyes and a hopeful smile. "I'm sorry to bother you," Hayden said. "I used to live here. I just wanted to see it one last time." The woman hesitated, then smiled. "Come in." Hayden stood in the doorway for a moment and breathed in. It still smelled like cheap carpet and old dreams. She didn't need to walk further. "Family, thank you for spending this moment with me here on Love and Twilight. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because every click helps us spread love and light to more souls who need it. And remember, your thoughts matter, so share them in the comments. I'll be right there with you. Until next time, never forget, even in the darkest twilight, love will always be the light. Because she realized she had taken the pain from this place and turned it into a legacy. That night, Hayden tucked the twins into bed. She kissed Axel's forehead, brushed Winifred's hair back. Brad watched her from the door. "You're a wonder," he whispered. "So are we," she replied. As they climbed into bed together, Brad asked her, "If you could tell every woman watching your story one thing, what would it be?" She thought for a moment, then said, "Don't wait for someone to save you. Don't wait for the timing to be perfect. Don't wait for love to look like a fairy tale. Love that's real shows up in sweat, in work, in forgiveness, and in the courage to begin again."